Hello and welcome to hopefully the first of many SoFly Discovery episodes. My name is Callum from SoFly, and I'm sure you've never heard of me or SoFly in the past. So let me just help you understand very quickly what this is all about. So you may know me from FS Elite, and you probably recognize some of the other guys on the screen as well. And my new ambition is, well, not a new ambition, but an ambition I've always had is to help new people with flight simulation. So flight simulation is a hugely complex and complicated hobby to enjoy and join in with. I mean, it's very easy to think back to when I first started and I had no idea what things like AvSim were or downloading liveries, and I was stuck flying default stuff for the longest times. I've introduced SoFly because I think there is an opportunity to help newcomers join the community. With the new flight sim coming out and also the accessibility options for other simulators very prevalent at the moment, I think it's now the perfect time to help educate newcomers and even those experienced in the community learn a little bit more about the industry, learn a little bit more about where the industry is going, and also hopefully to help guide people to services and products that they might need in the future as well to have a better experience in flight simulation. So I'm going to leave kind of the meaty stuff about SoFly either in the description down below or over on the website, but it is very much a collaborative and community-based project. So with that, I've invited some of the leaders in their fields about certain elements, especially when it comes to the education and the involvement of newcomers into the world of flight simulation. So today I'm joined by Ben from Airline to Sim. I'm joined by Evan from Flight Sim Expo, Edson from Parallel 42, and also Sergio from helisimmer.com. So Ben, maybe you can just start and just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at Airline to Sim.
Sure, thank you, Callum. I'm Ben from Airline to Sim. We've been around since about 2013, and we're kind of best known for our training programs for complex add-ons. So the first one we did was a training program for the Q400, and that was presented by me and a guy from Flybe. So we had a series of about 20 videos, which went pretty in-depth into the Q400 and showed you how it was flown on the line by those guys from Flybe and the other airlines that fly. Obviously, Flybe may rest in peace now, sadly. So yeah, absolutely, yeah. So a bit of a shame, really. We won't see many of those in Europe anymore. But we did that, and then kind of moved on from there. Did another series about the Q400 because it's a very complex add-on. So we were able to do some engine failures and non-normal stuff and things that you probably wouldn't normally do in the sim. And it's quite hard to do, but we show people how to do it. And then we moved on with a program for the Boeing 777 that was presented with a captain from United, a kind of salty old skipper who'd flown for United for 35 years. That was a lot of fun to do, and we moved on. I've got a guy from a well-known Orange airline to help me with a A320 program, which is in production right now, and we did a couple of other things along the way, some preview content. I think got the first video on YouTube of the Flight Sim Labs A320 before anybody else got there, and in fact tomorrow is a blatant plug. You'll have the first video of the Ini Simulations A300, which I'm working on right now. And even though I'm under an NDA, I can tell you it's bloody good. It really is. It's going to change the game for X-Plane. So that's kind of exciting. So yeah, that's what I do. And as you say, very much involved in education. People come along and they think, I really want to fly the 777, but where do I start? Where do I fly an aeroplane that is basically modeled on the real thing? Like, this is like flying a real 777, right? So, we hopefully can take them from the bottom of the steps on day one as a rookie, and, before you know it, they're shooting a Cat 3 auto land into Munich in zero visibility, and they learn it all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. I'm sure we'll talk all about what you're going to be able to do to help newcomers, especially with your awesome trainings videos. Evan, how about yourself?
So I'm one of the two co-founders of Flight Sim Expo, which is North America's largest flight simulation conference designed to basically bring the community together. So we have developers, we have attendees, they may be real pilots, they may be people who are just enthusiastic about flying. And this annual conference helps bring those people together with talks, with exhibit hall access, and including many of the people who are on this video call have all been to previous shows that we've had in the past several years. And this kind of concept, this SoFly idea, would have helped me out tremendously back in about 2006 when I was first getting into simulation. As Callum says, for the longest time, I was flying with a mouse and a keyboard because I didn't know any better. I was flying in single player because I didn't know any better. I didn't know that you could even hook up the GPS to like the autopilot. So I was like sitting there adjusting the heading bug by like one increment at a time to try and keep it on the magenta line. And then finally somebody told me like, this could do it for you, right? That was a good day for me. So definitely this kind of thing is really a passion of mine. Simulation has helped me become where I am today. It's certainly played a big role in Flight Sim Expo, but it's also played a big role in my life. Today I'm an airline pilot. I fly the Embraer 175, and every step all along the way for that journey, from private pilot through to commercial and instrument, through to even the airline training, simulation was a huge part of helping me get where I am. And because of that, I'm hoping to give back to the community both through Flight Sim Expo, and I'm also a very active controller on the VATSIM network and can talk lots about online flying, what's good, what's bad, and things that we like to see on the network, whether it's VATSIM, IVAO, POSCON, Pilot Edge, or anything else.
Awesome. And I think we can all attest to the quality of the shows that you guys put on, and just how helpful they are for anyone, even if they are newcomers or even experienced simmers. So it's a pleasure to have you here. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. So Edson, how about yourself, my friend?
First of all, thank you for introducing me as Parallel 42. However, today I have taken off my Parallel 42 cap and set it to the side. My name is Edson, and 5.5 years ago, I started a community called the SkyLounge.tv. It is, I guess, the lighter side of aviation. It's fun. It's less systems-based. And it's just a good time on the air. We stream on Twitch, but we also started a community online that has since now moved to Discord, like many. But it's amazing to see the paths that flight simulation can provide for people. In Ben's story, he kind of went the full-on training people on systems and procedures route. In Evan's story, he went the route of real-world airline pilot. In mine, I switched out to developer role after identifying tools and utilities and opportunities that didn't exist. And now I'm more known as Parallel 42, but my heart and soul is still as a community flyer and a simmer overall. So Edson, known as OMG Edson, hello everyone and welcome.
Thank you very much. And again, this was exactly why I wanted to bring you on for this first episode, was to talk about that community aspect, because the Sky Lounge, for those who do know about it, is a very welcoming and very, you don't just sign up and then you kind of leave it. You stay there for a very long time and you do get very involved with the community. So really great to have you. And last but by no means least, and I've saved him till last because I know he'll talk about helicopters even if I put him first.
Every video that we're in.
Yeah.
Every video.
So it's our very dear pal, Sergio from helisimmer.com. Hi, Sergio.
Hey, Callum. Thank you for having me. And for the record, I don't even have to talk about helicopters because you guys are doing it for me. It's just the level of corruption is so high.
I feel we should do a helicopter training program next time. I think we've done too many airplanes, right?
Did I say anything? I didn't say anything.
No, I'm just saying. I don't want you to feel left out.
Yeah, it was Ben's idea, not mine. I didn't say anything, so it wasn't me.
It's just your presence. As soon as you're involved in anything, people just want to, let's do helicopter things with you.
Yeah, it's like this glow. I just glow helicopters. Well, I do have this background. So Hi, Callum. Thank you very much for having me. I am Sergio. I'm a founder and editor of helisimmer.com, which is not only a website dedicated to helicopter flight simulation, where you have news and articles and reviews and all that, but we are also a community of rotorheads, of people that enjoy this weird side of flight simulation and want to learn more about helicopters and want to learn more about how to expand towards other things than just flying around from airport to airport. One thing that we usually say, there are two things that we usually say. One of them is, does it have helipads? But the truth is, the world is our helipad. We can land anywhere. It's just a matter of, finding some good places to land and enjoy the view. And that's pretty much what we do in the sim. And outside the sim, we try to help everyone that comes into our community to understand helicopters, because the helicopters are hard. They are very hard to fly. They're just very quirky machines, very, very, I wouldn't say deadly, but they try to kill you and your wife and your neighbor and your dog and they are terrible machines to control. And we try to get people to understand the fundamentals of helicopter flying, the hardware that they need to have, how things should be set up, and just try to help them achieve this amazing feeling of being a helicopter pilot in the flight simulation world. That's pretty much it. Thank you very much for inviting me, Callum, and welcome, guys, to this new and amazing venture.
Well, thank you for being part of it as well. So I want to jump in with probably one of the most common questions I've seen online over the last couple of days, and this kind of goes out to everybody, so whoever wants to jump in with the answer first, go ahead. What can we do then to support newcomers to the community? So this is, I'm talking about, the people who've seen the new Microsoft Flight Sim or any flight sim through a gaming magazine, and they're obviously very interested in the graphics, they're very interested in the types of planes they have. So someone's brand new coming into the community, what kind of piece of advice would you give them from the outstart? So you have this kind of discussion with that person who's completely new.
Good question.
Helping them find a community? Is that where you're striking at the top? We probably need a digest of communities.
I think you're probably right.
I think that's a huge component, even if you look at the stories we've all just said, right? I think each of us has sort of found one community as a starting point, and that's been the launching pad to say, oh, here's some, here's AvSim, here's FS Elite, here's VATSIM, here's whatever. You find out about that because you don't know anything at all, and you find out about this place and you join their TeamSpeak or their Discord or their forums, and somebody says, hey, have you heard about this? Have you heard about that? I think that's how a lot of simmers get hooked in, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say I think the point I would make actually is to take a step back from that and actually encourage the members of our existing community to actually encourage newcomers by helping them, because we've probably all seen this where somebody new pops up and they go, hey, what's PMDG? And it's a perfectly valid question, but everyone will just kind of pounce and think, you idiot. How can you not know what PMDG is? Or they'll give them sarcastic answers, or or they'll just hate on them. And I think that's quite unfair, because we've all kind of been there, and we've all kind of seen these amazing YouTube videos of people flying jumbo jets and stuff, and we think, well, I quite fancy doing this. But as you said at the outset, Callum, the learning curve is incredibly steep. So I think the first stage in this is actually to encourage the people that we already have in the community to help people coming in.
I totally agree. Yeah. How do we do that?
I think there are actually two sides of the story. I think on one end there's a side of the community, which is where we are, and what you said, Ben, is pretty much valid. And what you see a lot out there on Facebook groups and whatnot, it's just a result of we came from an era in which we had little to no information, and then Google came up, and then social media came up, and Facebook made it very easy. It wasn't that easy to start a good forum some years ago. So when you head out to a forum that had a few thousand users, it would probably be a good bet that it was a good forum. I remember years ago when I started flying helicopters, there was only one forum called All for Control, and it was a huge community. And from that alone, I understood that it was a large community. People were there to help them, and then now we have the tools to easily create. Anyone can create a Facebook group, right? It's very easy, and you can fill the Facebook group with people in a matter of hours or days. The number of people inside the group doesn't necessarily tell you how good the group is. So we now have a plethora of resources, which a lot of them are very toxic. We have very toxic groups in the community. That's something that it's there, and it's very hard to fight. And then you have groups with the same name, and it's kind of messy. But yes, we as community members have to do our share, and I've taken a lot of time and effort to educate my own community, and I'm not trying to advertise my group or my community or anything like that, but I can tell you right away that the helicopter flight simulation group that I have on Facebook is probably one of the best groups, because people just behave. They know how to behave, and that's a matter of the people that were behind it getting that culture of teaching, helping, and not bashing people. We just ban people that go there and bash other members, just like that, right? But there's something that it's very interesting and important, and I think it was you, Callum, that said the other day that we had a conversation, which is I think that the developers, the people that make these sims and get these sims out there, should also perhaps lend a hand in pointing out to people that use the products, the communities, the websites, the Facebook groups, whatever that is out there, that they believe is probably the best point for them to start. Just start. It's not. I'm not saying that they should have a list of all the groups, but the primary groups, the ones that are actually there to help people start getting into flight simulation. So I think there's room there for those companies to do that. But yeah, I agree that the first thing that we need to do is to actually educate other people on our communities and tell them, teach and help these guys. Don't bash them.
So I think,
speaking to your point though, Sergio, I think that your group thrives as being an educated group because you are not scared to moderate, right? And it's
definitely.
A lot of it boils down to a moderator, an administrator, a creator, a founder that cares to tame the group and that is bold enough to say, you're not a fit for us. And that's okay. There may be a group out there that you're a fit for, but you're not a fit for us. And we do the same thing, right? We have no problems. Callum's probably seen it in streams. I mean, I got no problem showing people the door. I think I like to play with the Sky Lounge, giving it a sense of a physical location. Listen, you just walked into this lounge. Be nice.
Yeah.
Or you'll be shown the door. It's very easy. It's very clear cut. And we've got our general rules and guidelines, and we are not scared to enforce them. So keeping that community tame is definitely important, but you always have to give people a first chance to come in and feel welcome, right? Now, speaking as a community, what do we do? On Saturday nights, we host an event called Cub Club, and we're excited for the 18th for said Cub Club. But in Cub Club, we get together as a group and level the playing field. Everyone flies Piper Cubs or a variant of a short takeoff and landing aircraft. Minimal skill required, mouse and keyboard if you want, whatever it takes. We're all on voice and we're all goofing off. And what that does is it gives every single new person, regardless of their skill level, an opportunity to hang out and practice, right? Over time, they start to see, wow, these guys are taking off together. I want to try and get to that. Oh, these guys are flying in formation. I want to try to get to that. And they make friends, and we're all on voice, and we're all just goofing off. But every weekend that happens, it's basically getting new people to become more experienced people to eventually graduate out this way, right? Some of them are going to eventually do those ILS landings. Some of them are going to go off and do real world. Some of them are going to want to be on VATSIM. right? We don't VAT sim typically our community, but we get kicked off. Sorry, Evan. But eventually some people want to graduate out to that. So giving people a path to come in, but letting them understand that it's okay to go beyond is important as a community.
I think any community does that. Whatever, whether it's like yours where it's flying or whether it's like going to Absent and reading the forums. I mean, that's the key, is to just find these resources, which is what SoFly is going to be. Find these resources where when you're new, you can be talking to people or you can be reading things from people who are saying, I was new once. I remember exactly what that was like. Here are some of the things that helped me. And so, Edson's giving a great example of how that actually happens in person, so to speak, live and in real time. That can happen on a forum. That can happen in a discussion board. That can happen any number of ways, even watching a video.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'd agree.
I think you raised some important points. I mean, so your example, Ben, of what does PMDG stand for, I think I saw that particular example quite recently. And
the strange thing is that it doesn't actually mean anything now, because it says it's manuals, isn't it? Something precision manual, and they don't make manuals, they make airplanes now. They used to make manuals, but not anymore. So it doesn't really matter what it stands for, right?
So I just wondered if there's any. So yeah, PMDG is like a primary. Well, it's a aircraft maker for virtual planes. They don't make actual planes. Is there any other acronyms or terms that we see as like quite common that we could very quickly just fire across right now, just to help educate anyone who is new to the industry?
FSL, Flight Sim Labs, that's another one. Make Airbuses, obviously.
Yeah. I think Evan, you mentioned AvSim. I mean, to most people that's probably quite alien, but that's a community forum.
Yeah, AvSim. Yeah.
AvSim, AvSim.
Yeah.
What is it? Is it AvSim or AvSim? What do you guys think?
I don't know.
I've always
when I say AvSim.
I've always said AvSim, but I think if you, I'm on Reddit, and there's a few flight simulation forums there, and the kind of general consensus is that AvSim is like, kind of boomer city. If you're a boomer, you hang out on AvSim, and if you're not, then you're on, Facebook or Reddit. Now, I'm on AvSim, and I have a forum there, so I don't necessarily subscribe to that.
Okay, boomer.
Okay, boomer. But it's interesting.
Showing his colours now.
You got me. But it's interesting to see the perception. I would imagine, I know this is a wild guess, that the kind of Reddit demographic is a bit younger, and it's interesting to see their perception of some of these kind of old school forums. And obviously AvSim, AvSim, whatever you want to call it, has not been without its own dramas over the last 10 or 20 years. Anyone that's been in flight simulation for a long time will know exactly what I'm talking about.
Here's what's amazing and why this chat is going to be so important. Even that Reddit demographic is about to get younger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all get old, right? Young people become old people, and
Xbox is a completely different market.
Well, this is it. And I think actually it goes back to what Callum said at the start, which is, we are about to, in how many days is it now? I'm probably the only person who's actually not even seen the beta version yet, by the way. What is it? A week or so?
11 days.
From the next, from
days.
The platform that will, think about it, right? P3D is pretty much kind of FSX with lots of lipstick. Yeah, prepared. Yeah, P3D precisely. So we're doing it again. People, newcomers watching this go, well, P3. What are they talking about? But the whole point is P3D is FSX with a lot of lipstick, and this is the first time since 2006 that actually we are actually now opening the door to a new era, not just painting the old door with new paint. So that is going to bring in. I think, as you said on the last stream that I watched, it's going to bring in how many people have Xbox? It's tens of millions, right?
168,000 Xbox Live memberships. Now that's just live. That doesn't include people that don't have live.
So
it's millions, right?
All right, millions. Sorry, millions.
Yeah.
Well, that seems way too low.
I was going to say, so I was told that Xbox Game Pass, and this just kind of echoes your point, Ben. Xbox Game Pass currently has 10 million people. So Microsoft Flight Sim is coming to Game Pass in 11 days. That means 10 million people have instant access to this simulator. So
precisely.
Whether they
and a lot of them will try it. A lot of them will try it, even if they don't
see proud will be proud.
I mean, we may just see our little community. I mean, how many people who are regular kind of gamers, or people with even a passing interest in aviation, how many of them have ever heard of Prepare 3D? How many of them probably even heard of FSX, bearing in mind that the last time it was advertised was in 2006, right? They were barely even born maybe when it was being marketed by Microsoft. And then it kind of vanished. Microsoft killed it. It disappeared. It was kept alive by third-party developers and people like us. But people coming into the community, they will not even know about it. They won't even know this exists. Yeah. So we could see actually our community. Wow, there it is. Is that the original one?
G's?
Oh wow! Is that a floppy disk? It's like
5.5. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
My God, that's like half a meg of data right there. that's like 1 tree in the new sim, right?
It goes back that far. It goes back that far that people have had this interest. So compile
but the
all
last
those
time,
people, plus the new.
Yeah, precisely. But what I'm saying is that our current community, how many people actually sim worldwide now? How many people are actually in this community? You can it's probably in the tens or maybe the hundreds of thousands, the low hundreds of thousands. It's about to become 10 million potentially. And they're not going to be super hardcore simmers that will want to fly helicopters or learn to fly 777 or hang out in the Sky Lounge, whatever. But some of them will, even if, half of 1% of those people, our community will, kind of go, 100 times the size it is overnight.
I totally agree.
That's a scary thought. Right? That is a scary thought.
What's I don't know. Who's good at maths, right? What's 0.001% of 10 million? I don't know what it is. It's a lot.
Just calculate
10%. 10% is 1 million.
100,000.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Actually, it's not. It's
25,000
big, is it? Right? Yeah. Okay. But I mean, even so.
I think it's something like 25 to 50,000. Yeah. But even so, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So can you imagine?
Of course it is.
Yeah. All of a sudden, can you imagine even having 2,000 new members on a Facebook group in a matter of 2 or 3 days? We're talking about a lot of people asking for help. Right. That's a lot of people.
Precisely.
Yeah, we need a funnel. Definitely.
And
we do. And remember, of course, that the default aircraft, and we've kind of seen the videos now, and compared to BMDG we just talked about and flight simulators, compared to those super sophisticated add-on aircraft, they are still a little bit basic. But compared to, you think of the default aircraft we were flying, back in the late 2000s, they were rubbish. They were absolutely, 2D panels. There was no, there was a basic GPS and you would slave it, and they were rubbish. Whereas these have a FMC, and you can fly LNAV and VNAV and SIDS and stars and all that. People coming in are going to be like mind blown by this stuff.
And I think I just want to point out as well, when FSX came out, and that was obviously a Microsoft big release and it attracted a lot of people. You look at what FSX was back in the day and the graphics that it had, and you look at what we're about to get, and this is mind-blowing. So I think people will be sucked into this much longer term than what they ever were with FSX, because a lot of the crap we had to put up with about buying add-on after add-on after add-on after add-on just to make the sim look okay, we kind of don't have to do anymore with this new sim, because some of it is already there to make kind of that initial enjoyment, that VR, that experience around flying over your house or your local city or to your local airport is already kind of there, and you have a much better basis to start that, I think, passion for flight simulation from the get-go. And I think that's why having all these people come along, I think, will stick around a lot longer than what they probably did with like the FSX back in the day. And I think this really goes back to the point of, these are we talk about 10 million people coming into the community. These are gamers at the end of the day. Some of them may have flight sim experience, but ultimately we've seen big gaming publications, IGN, GameSpot, CNN. I mean, well done, Sergio, for your article inclusion the other day, just whilst we were thinking of that. But this is gaining mainstream media. This isn't just a new flight sim. This is something worldwide that people are now vested in. So we're going to get a lot of people who are going to ask probably what we would consider noob questions or like stupid questions, but I think you're right. It's so important we educate to get these people to stay in the community. And I think the bit that is missed by people about why helping these people is a really good idea is because the stronger we are as a community, ultimately that helps the community sites like us, it helps the developers, it helps the publishers, because there are more people able to buy more stuff. And if people are buying more stuff, it's going to help things with like pricing. It's going to help things like with more and more products because there's more developers to work on things. So long term, answering that question, who is PMDG, in a very friendly, polite, helpful way, may have really positive long-term consequences for all of us. I mean,
I'd say like we see this a lot in the VATSIM side, which is one of many virtual air traffic control communities. You can connect as a pilot, you can connect and get trained as a controller, and basically it simulates real world. We see this all the time on the network where somebody comes on and they hear one negative thing from one person. One person says to them, "That's a stupid question," and they leave and they disappear forever. And that's a two-sided thing. For starters, us in the community, we really shouldn't be doing that, right? There's no place for that in this community. We were all there once. We all asked a stupid question or a beginner question when we were on a network flying for the first time online. So there's no place for that. But also, if you're new to this community, don't let that 1% of people who act that way be a reflection on the rest of us, because that's not who we are as a community. That's certainly not who many of the people who are here with me today, it's not the community that we think of and that we want to have. We want to be welcoming people. If you want to learn, if you're willing to make the effort, if you're willing to do the reading that it's going to take to get you to the level that you need to be at for whatever it is that you want to do, we want to enable that. So please don't be that person who says, "Oh, I got this one person who said a really mean thing to me. I'm just never going to come back to this again." You have to draw a line under it. You have to let that water brush off your back, and you have to be willing to just continue on, because there are great people in this community. There are so many of these little niche hub subgroups that you'll find all across flight simulation. You will find the right one for you. Don't let one bad experience or two bad experiences throw you off if you encounter one.
I totally agree.
Yeah, I agree. I think toxic communities tend to attract toxic people, and I think we've all seen a lot of toxicity around certain, maybe even certain individuals, actually, in this community. And I think you see that, for example, with streamers, there are some streamers who are just nice guys, and they generally attract kind of nice people to watch them. And then, there have been other streamers in the past who we've seen who are sometimes quite toxic themselves, and they seem to attract a whole kind of toxic crowd around them. And I think that the one thing for newcomers is, think carefully about the kind of people that you want to follow, because there are lots of different types of people. And I think, life's a bit too short for toxic people, in my personal opinion. So, hang out with nice people. Nice people attract nice people, I think.
I think you raise a really good point as well. So streamers, I mean, when FSX came out, we didn't have anything like that to learn or educate ourselves from.
You couldn't stream FSX. It was impossible, right?
You could play FSX.
But you had a supercomputer.
You could take screenshots, though. You could share your screenshots.
Yeah, that was it.
Exciting.
I mean, do you remember the screenshot forum where you do a flight and you take screenshots and then you post, look, I flew to Barcelona, look. Now that just, the idea of posting a load of screenshots on a forum now, it just sounds bonkers, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
No, I think the tools we have today are incredible for like educational purposes and entertainment purposes as well. I mean, if I'm working and stuff, I put on a stream and just watch someone flying a plane, even though I could be doing it. But it's just that entertainment value as well, isn't it? And the art and the...
It's nice to see other people fly.
Yeah. And I've picked up loads of little tidbits and stuff. And I think that kind of raises my next question is, where does the education stop? Do you ever finish learning about this hobby or this the world of flight
Evan,
simulation?
you're the only one that can answer this.
I think Evan is going to
Never
jump
stop,
in and
right?
say, you
Never stop.
even I think as a real pilot, you never like in anything, right? You never stop learning. There's always something that you don't know how to do, or you're not equipped to deal with. You're like, wow, how do I deal with it? I like anything. No, I think you could live for 1,000 years and the education wouldn't stop.
So now I know how Sergio feels. Everyone's accusing him about helicopters. I didn't even say anything, but you're right, 100%. You guys hit the nail on the head with that.
But you got to recertify and recertify nonstop.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just you're constantly
Precisely.
needing to learn.
Well, whether it's real world or it's simulation, I think aviation has this way of humbling you. And I've found in my career and in my flying and in my virtual controlling, every time I start to feel like, okay, I'm really feeling comfortable, I kind of know this is feeling good, I do something stupid or something happens and I'm like, wow, that was like a really weird moment for me. And you just are reminded of that every time almost you go out in a real airplane. I mean, you're doing such a really cool and really unique thing if you're flying in a real airplane, and the same is true for simulation. So you're never going to stop that process, and we all have to keep an open mind. The number of times that I'll almost like once a day where I'll just pick up something and I'm like, I never thought of that before.
Yeah.
I think it's
isn't that a huge reason why we also love this hobby?
Yeah.
Seriously,
Yeah.
everybody I talk with, all my friends that use flight simulation as a hobby or a game or whatever you want to call it, everyone that I know that is involved with flight simulation, one of the things that I noticed is that we all like to be on a constant learning path. We are always learning new things from the start. And yes, there's a lot of things to learn in the beginning. I remember, you guys know how I actually started learning about flight simulation. Do you guys remember that I think it was on Microsoft Flight Simulator 2000 or 2002, there was a ground school PDF by Rod Machado. And I started learning for real, using that manual, using that PDF. And I remember seeing things that I already knew, of course, but later, a few years later, I gave that PDF to someone that was just starting with flight simulation. They like the aircraft, they like airplanes, they like to see airplanes, but they had no clue about anything regarding aviation. And seeing the light bulbs, in their heads, behind their eyes, the sparkle when they discover things like, oh, this is why runways have numbers, and this is why they are numbered this way. This is so basic for us, but people don't know about it. I'm going to land on runway 4. I don't think most people even start to think about why is it that the runway is number 4, and is it because there are 4 runways on the airport and you have 1, 2? People don't think about it, but when they start getting into the hobby and learning these things, they really start to dig into and love it. And there's a lot of things to learn in the beginning because, there's a whole world of stuff that we need to know. But this learning never stops. It never ends. We are learning new things every day. And for me, is one of the big reasons why I love this hobby, because I get to do new things every time. I learn new stuff every time. And, I think that you guys here in this chat feel the same, because that's the vibe that I've been having with you as we have talked before and throughout the years that we know each other. So I think that's actually one of the big pluses, and one of the things that gives me more pleasure in this hobby is the fact that we are always getting to learn new things.
Here's the thing. If you think you've learned it all, if you think you've beat the game and reached the end of Flight Sim, record your flight from start to finish with cockpit view only and upload it to YouTube and get a notepad. Right? Because somebody in the comments is going to destroy you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think, I don't think there's such a thing as the perfect flight. I'm sure Evan will say this from, flying, the real world aeroplane, that, there's always something you could have done better. And it's exactly the same. I mean, I know a lot of the real, because I work with a big team of real world pilots every day, and they talk about landing the plane. You think we always want to get that perfect landing, right? And sometimes you can get in, you think, oh god, that was terrible, but that's just like an everyday life of a real pilot. That some of them are clangers, and you go, oh well, or you have a run of clangers, where you just seemingly forget how to fly the airplane, and although it's perfectly safe, it's just a bit embarrassing. So the same things that happen to us in the flight sim world actually also happen in the real world. And I think we have that constant quest to always improve, and it's quite hard to explain to people who are not in our community actually what the appeal is in this. People say, well, you sit by your computer for like 2 hours, and you like sit there on the ground and you program a thing, and you get a bit of paper out, and you try to kind of rationalize it, and you can see them kind of thinking, this guy's nuts. But actually, we do it because you enjoy it, because you kind of think, right, okay, I'm at this airport and I want to go there, and I've got the charts, and I've got the SID and the star, and I'm going to do the fuel, and I'm going to taxi out, and you get lost in this little world for hours. And that's the thing about, and I'm sure you guys know, that you think, right, I'm going to jump on my sim and go do a quick flight, and then 4 hours later you think, my God, I've been sitting here for 4 hours, and you didn't even notice. Unfortunately, it's a very antisocial hobby, but a lot of hobbies.
Well, and I find I'm sat on the ground for 4 hours because I realise, I haven't updated this add-on. Oh, hang on, I didn't install that bit.
Oh, yeah.
And then, hold on. And then when you finally get to your destination, it's default airport because you forgot to install the scenery file.
Yeah, you didn't install the airport or something. Yeah. We've all been there. I mean, that's the thing. Look, I mean, flight simming, and anyone new to it, it's probably kind of 60% farting around, and if you're lucky, 40% actually flying the thing. That's how it works.
Yeah.
That is actually one of the reasons why I don't have a lot of add-ons. That's exactly, I have so little time to actually sim that I really cannot afford to spend a lot of time taking care of my add-ons. I try to get as little add-ons as possible.
It's just a full-time job.
Because otherwise I'll be just tweaking and updating, and when I look at the clock, it's time to just go do everything else that I have.
Other things. Yeah. I know, 4 hours of your life could be swallowed up. And actually, I think that may well, I mean, we've said this, for years, but this might be something that changes with the new sim, because actually, can you really improve that weather? Can you really do a lot with the ground textures? Is there much to be tweaked and added on and played with? All right, we know that the default airports are not that much better than what we already have, so there will be the space for that. There will be the space for aircraft, but kind of apart from that, there's probably not so much to do. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, you guys would probably play with it more than me, but you're under NDA, so you can't even tell us.
Not this one.
So circling back to what Sergio mentioned earlier about the basics and explaining why the runways have numbers and what those numbers mean. Earlier this week, my man Squirrel, shout out Squirrel, released a video where he got incredibly elementary with explaining flight. And he went on and explained the runway numbers and why we have them, and went over and showed them into camera. I love that. And we need more of that kind of content right now. This, for us, is an enormous reset of the industry, of the community. And I'm going to call on all my fellow content creators to think of your earliest days of learning and apply all the knowledge you've picked up since then and create content for all the new people coming in. Because if we go searching for this early content today, it barely exists. Yeah. We didn't even have YouTube when this stuff came out. So create that content. Make the fresh new content introducing people to flight sim, to aviation. Inspire. Now's the chance for everyone. And watch your views go.
I think it goes beyond content creators though, right? I think that's an amazing shout out, and absolutely the right message to send across. But going back even further to what we were saying at the beginning about helping people in the community, I think everybody needs to take that step back and remember what was their first question they remember asking someone because they wanted to educate themselves, and what type of response kept them in the community. Because I think had I been given a response of negativity or toxic kind of response, then yeah, I probably would have closed the door and continued playing other types of games and stuff, right? So I think that
you could be a multi-millionaire by now if you had picked another line of business instead of running SoFly and FSLE. You'd be making millions of dollars flying around the world on a private jet. Who knows what Callum would have ended up doing if not for that moment, right?
Well, I
Could
know
have anything. Could have come up with eBay, Amazon. There were many opportunities back then,
Something
right?
really productive and helpful.
Well, instead
Jeff Bezos never played Flight Simulator.
Exactly.
You mean I could have had a girlfriend?
Yeah. Think of all the things. Think of all the possibilities.
that's not the message we want people to take away. If you join Flight Sim, you're never going to find love.
Sorry. I'm kicked off the video, aren't I? I'll just leave.
But I think it's really interesting to think back about that moment in time where it was like your first time asking questions. I remember my first experience of being on AvSim, for example, and asking questions there, and it was quite easy, quite straightforward. And then I discovered liveries. You could add paints to aircraft, and that for me is I want to feel like we're bringing that element back into the community to help these new people. And I think quite rightly, Edson, this is a huge reset for all of us here, regardless of what type of content or production we make for flight simulation, because we're learning this new sim as much as what the community are learning this new sim as well. So I think this is our opportunity also to be able to do that for the newcomers that are inadvertently going to join us. And I also think it will help the experienced simmers as well. I don't think none of this will degrade their experience within the flight sim. I've seen loads of people talking about how you can't fly a plane like that because that's not a simulation, that's not realistic. And I'm just thinking, well, it's a simulator. You fly it however you want to fly.
Yeah, you can do whatever you like. Yeah, precisely.
I mean, X-Plane lets you build your own. You can build your own airplane. Fly anything.
Exactly. So
yeah, precisely. It's the whole idea of simulation. It's escapism, right? That's why we like this sim, because we can escape into our own little world. I'm interested to know, actually, Cam, what was your very first flight sim experience? Which sim was it, and what were you trying to do?
So it was Flight Sim 2000, the one with the Concorde on the front. And the reason that my parents bought me that was because my uncle worked on the Concorde in a local factory near us. So anyway, loaded it in on the family computer, which was in like the main like bedroom where everyone could watch, because back in those days it was no laptops and whatnot. And is it the Kings? I can't remember their names, but it was like the two instructors, very cheesy like video thing. And we were sat on Meeksfield in the Cessna. Didn't have a joystick, it was keyboard and mouse input, and it was trying to take off, and it was disaster after disaster, just tail strikes all the time. Eventually managed to take off, and that bit was easy, but the landing was the hardest part. So I remember, and this is very distinct in my head, coming into land, and after probably the 30th attempt, coming in, two reds, two whites, perfect. And then I don't know what happened, had like a little spasm, hit the key, and the plane just went like that. And at that point, I vowed to never use a flight simulator ever again. And then it was probably another 2 years later where I then tried it again, got back into aviation and like really wanted to try it, and finally got a joystick. And to be honest with you, that was the turning point for me, was getting that joystick. That made the whole experience so much easier. And then suddenly I was doing long hauls, I was doing Concorde flights, and then I discovered AvSim, and then I downloaded like Virgin Atlantic as like my first livery for like the 777 in the thing. So it's all fictional, but it was all good fun.
I think there are two milestones. You just said two things that I think are very much. I have this engraved in my mind, and I think these are two milestones that people have in their lives as simmers. And I'm sure that you guys, the rest of you guys, probably had the same flashbacks that I had, and you probably agree with me when I say this. One of the things that one of the milestones is actually getting the first joystick, which makes a world of difference, right? So that's the first thing, and we know that the amount of control we get on an airplane with the joystick, it's just that much better.
Yeah.
But guys, actually landing the first time on purpose. It's not just landing the first time. It's because landing the first time, even if you do it, not such on purpose, it's just and it happened. It's cool. But landing when you actually realize that you have that amount of control, because let's face it, taking off is easy. Throttle, full throttle, and the aircraft just takes off. But landing the first, getting to align with the runway, it was really hard. You guys remember, right? Just aligning with the runway when we had no clue of what we were doing, it was really hard. But aligning with the runway and managing to land for the first time, and you guys remember that's the kind of experience that I hope newcomers will get, because that's the point that makes a simmer. From that, if you manage to get to this point, and landing is not easy and people will crash, but if you go up past that and you try and you try it and you try again, like you eventually give up, but you return to aviation later on, Callum. But if you don't give up and keep on it, you will eventually notice that you can do this, and then you can do the next step. And the landing, which is something that it came from hell, something that the devil itself invented landings to make us upset and go nuts. Once you pass that point and you start to actually land the aircraft, in my opinion, that's where you get to be a simmer, and you'll never look back, and you'll want to continue to sim. That's one of the key milestones in my perception of a path of a simmer. Once you reach that point, it's just you'll just soar. No pun intended. So I think that
I remember my experience was actually similar to Callum, because I had flight simulator. I think it was 2000, right? Was like you say, the one with Concorde. Mine was the opposite of yours. Yours was taking off all the time, and mine was actually you could set up a landing config. So you were at Meigs Field and you were at 1,000 feet, or so, not even that, maybe 500 feet. And then you would try and land, and there I was, with my keyboard and my mouse, and it was just impossible. And I thought, well, maybe I'll try something bigger. So, I'll try the Concorde. I'll see if I can land, Concorde from 500 feet at Meigs Field. Let's see how that goes. And of course, it was just, carnage every single time. And when you look back now and you think, what was I thinking? When you go, hey, let's land Concorde at Meigs Field, you just think, what the hell? But, back then you didn't really know anything different, right? It's a plane and there's a runway. What's the problem? So, and it just, goes how, now when I land in the sim and I kind of, all the words of the airline pilots thinking, in the touchdown zone and, on speed and don't float and wings level and all that stuff, whereas like before, if you even got it like on the runway, it doesn't matter, just if it's on the runway, that's a good result, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. So I want to just begin wrapping things up, and I want to go around the table, the room, whatever we want to call this. So imagine you've got this new person in front of you, and you have to give them just one piece of advice that they can take away to keep with them, to help them feel inspired and to continue learning about flight simulation. So, Evan, let's start with you. What advice would you give to that new person?
Sergio mentioned that there were 2 milestones for simmers. I'm going to add a third one, and it comes probably a little while after those first 2. For me, that's getting online. And that doesn't have to be with a VATSIM organization where your objective is to fly airliners realistically. That could be combat and DCS. That could be formation flying. You could get your phone and fly Infinite Flight, and you can participate in their various tiered multiplayers where there's some for beginners and some for super serious people. There are just like thousands of these little tiny sub-communities, ones like Edson described, ones like Ben described. There's so many of these groups out there in this flight simulation world. What I would encourage anyone to do once you've gotten a basic handle on the airplane and you can more or less take off and land when you want to, is to go and seek out 5 or 6 of these communities and find the few that are right for you. And you'll watch your learning go from this up to this, because it's a huge jump the moment you start to interact with other people and they're watching and you're watching them and you're asking them questions and they're saying, hey, have you heard about this? The things that you pick up just by listening to 3 or 4 people talking about flying from JFK to Boston, it's an incredible amount of knowledge just literally dripping out of them as they're talking. So for me, that's the big third milestone. You've got your joystick, you've done your first landing, you've got some competence with the airplane. Now it's finding your way into this online true community of simmers, getting the social aspect to it. And I think once you start to make some friends and you start to really fit in somewhere, it's a totally different experience. You're not just flying solo anymore in the basement and single player. It is actually a social hobby, as it turns out. You just have to find your way to it.
Yeah. I think it's social for the people you're flying online with. It's not very social for your family, your girlfriend, or your wife, or your whatever. Yeah.
The trick is,
but neither is golf. So, people can go out and golf for 4 hours on a Sunday morning. Why can't I sim for 4 hours on a Sunday morning?
Precisely.
I understand that.
I quite agree. Yeah. Quite agree.
Awesome. Same question to you, Ben. Then, what advice would you give to someone new?
I would probably say, to kind of don't necessarily be afraid of those complex aeroplanes. And I guess I would say this because I'm coming from a background of showing people how to fly complex aeroplanes. But actually, ironically, the bigger the aeroplane, the easier it is to fly. So, and I know that sounds crazy, but let's say, for example, the Q400, which is a small aeroplane which constantly tries to kill you. Bit like a helicopter. It's a bit like a helicopter with wings. It's a prop, and there's prop levers and the throttles, and there's a billion things to think about. The autopilot has that outsell thing, whereas if you don't press it busts the altitude, and it's a real, it's a handful to fly in the real world, and that has been simulated in the sim. Whereas when you look at something like the 777, it's a huge, enormous aeroplane, but you take off and you can hit the autopilot, and generally speaking, after that, it will look after itself. So don't be afraid of the complex things. I often see people when newcomers come in and they say, I'd love to fly a 737 or an A320 or something, and you get these sniffy people like, go off and learn to fly a Cherokee or a Tomahawk first, or a 152. We go and learn everything there is to know about that, and VOR flying and all that. I couldn't hand fly a VOR if my life depended on it, but I can press LNAV and VNAV. So there's flying skills are different things, and I think everyone will be aware of this from the real world, that actually once you get into that kind of instrument flying thing where you're very reliant upon the autopilot and the FMC and all that, actually the skills of being able to manually track a VOR and all that, they do degrade. But you kind of can't, most people can't do everything. I couldn't manually fly in a Cessna and track a VOR very, very well. So don't worry about that. Don't be intimidated by the complex stuff, because actually they have a lot of automation to help you. And even though it looks a bit intimidating when you get in a 747, you look at all these buttons, actually most of them don't do anything. Most of them are just there if your day goes very badly. Actually the buttons that you press are actually remarkably few. So don't be too intimidated.
And that's true. I mean, in my career, the bigger airplanes I have flown, the easier they are to actually fly and land. The hardest airplane I've ever landed is a Cessna 172. That thing is just it bounces all over the place in any kind of wind. So I fully agree with that statement. And, also the kind of flying that you're doing. I mean, IFR flying is much easier when you're in a simulator because RTC does everything for you. Even if it's the default ATC, they tell you what heading to fly. They tell you when to climb, when to descend. They do everything for you. If you want to fly VFR from, some airport to another airport, you have to be worried about the airspace and who am I going to be talking to, and you have to decide on your own navigation, and it's very complicated. Whether you're using the default ATC or whether you're going your own way, IFR actually makes things a lot easier for people. Just there's a whole lot of things you have to think about when you're actually flying an airplane in clouds, but in the sim, it makes life a lot easier.
Also, you mentioned VFR. Now, obviously, VFR in the existing sims like P3D, if you're just kind of flying over land class and stuff, there's not a lot of interest. I have a PPL. I can fly a real airplane. If I want to do that, I can rent an airplane and go and do it. But that will change in the new sim because now you actually can fly over your house and you can fly over landmarks and you can see rivers and towns and you can navigate by looking at the ground just like you would in a Cessna 152. And we haven't really been able to do this until now. And I think that will change things as well. I'm quite excited about getting the new sim because actually, you know what? I'd like to see if I can still fly a Piper Cherokee and actually just look at the ground and navigate that way, because I don't bother doing that in the sim because there's very little enjoyment. I get more enjoyment out of pushing all the buttons and doing all the automation stuff. But that may well change, and we may well see the patterns of people simming change a little bit because there's more enjoyment in that VFR stuff.
Yeah, awesome. I just want to echo that as well in some ways, because that was how I learned to really simulate. I started with the big jets and came down in size because I started to understand kind of the concepts and all of that of flying as well. Edson, what about yourself, my friend? If someone came up to you, what advice would you give them?
I've got 4 tips.
4 tips.
Find friends so you don't feel alone. Don't forget the music. Remember, you're in front of a computer, at least for the time being. Play music. Make the time go by. Make cinematic moments. Explore the world listening to your favorite songs. Right? Nobody's getting hurt. It's a simulator. You've got nothing to fear. And turn off crash detection. Turn off crash detection. Because it's a waste of time to get a black screen and go back out to the main menu just to try again. Turn it off. You bounce the plane, Get it back in the air, try again. Combine those, you'll have a great time, and you'll be simming like a hardcore simmer in no time.
I totally agree, especially on the point of...
Yeah, the crash detection, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you spend an hour setting up a flight and then you taxi out and you taxi into an invisible object near the runway and you're like, what?
Yep.
What happened there?
Or you're flying online and someone just decides to land on top of you. You're like, oh.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Some good tips. Thank you, Edson. And over to you, Sergio. Same question. I know you've kind of touched on some of those key points, but if you could narrow that down to one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, well, flight simulation is a very personal path. Actually, it's something that we all enjoy in different ways. We all have been through everything that new guys are going to be going through. We also had to learn how to take off and land and use all those buttons and get used to all those gauges and whatnot. But in the end, it is a personal experience. It's up to you to enjoy the sim the way that you want to enjoy it. One of the things that I would like for newcomers to understand is that everybody is going to try and push you their way of simming. If you go to a group or a forum and start asking questions, people would tell you, get add-on A, B, and C, do this and do that. Just ignore them. Do your research. Google is your friend. Don't just go to groups and ask people, because you'll get some good answers, you'll get some toxic answers. People forgot that Google exists and that there are a lot of good resources out there. Go to YouTube, find some tutorials, find your path, get a mentor, get someone in the flight simulation hobby that's been there for some time that you can relate with. Ask that person questions, ask for help, but do follow your path, because going after the same path that others have followed may have worked for them, but may not work for you. My path within flight simulation is kind of similar of what probably the rest of the guys here. I started flying airliners. The first aircraft that I flew was an airliner. Actually, it was a Learjet in Flight Simulation 4.
Sure.
In Flight Simulator 4, it was a Learjet. And later on, I started to fly airliners. I end up stopping and going back to the basics with that PDF and start flying with a Cessna. And then I went to helicopters and never looked back. I did a completely different path from the rest of the people that I know, really. No one that I know have done the same path that I did. So choose your own path. See what's comfortable for you. And with the tips that the rest of the guys are giving you, just make flight simulation your hobby. Don't follow others just because they had a good experience doing things their way. Do it your way.
I kind of echo that for my own advice as well. So my advice would be to set a goal for what you want to achieve. So for me, my goal was I really wanted to replicate a flight from Gatwick to Orlando because that was a flight I did as a kid. That was the one thing I really wanted to do in flight simulation. And that goal helped me understand what type of flight simulation stuff I wanted to get involved with, what add-ons I needed to buy to get that experience. And I think if you set yourself that goal from the outstart, you won't feel so overwhelmed, because I think one of the biggest hurdles newcomers face is the overwhelmingness of how many products there are, what add-ons are, what communities are online. You know, I mean, we've spoken probably about 50 acronyms just on this hour phone call as it is. So there is a huge amount of stuff out there, and having a goal will help you focus and narrow down what you're looking for in a flight simulation. So your goal might be to just fly over your house, or it could be to fly from your local airport to a big international airport in a little Cessna. Whatever your goal might be, that is for you to do and to keep to. And then I think once you've achieved that, you will have given yourself enough education to then want to take on that next step, that next challenge, and then give yourself that next goal. And before you know it, you'll be planning a weekend's worth of 4-sector flights all over Europe or America in whatever aircraft, followed by a few hours bush flying with some of your friends on whatever network you choose to do. And I think that would be the advice I would give, would be to set that goal and take it, kind of chunk it at a time, rather than trying to think you can conquer the world all in one flight, which, as we all know, is
the other bit of advice I would give is one, bring lots of money, because it's not a cheap hobby.
Like any
cheaper than real flying, though. Avgas is free.
It is cheaper than it is cheaper than real flying. Absolutely. I'm pretty sure renting a 777 isn't cheap. And the other thing is, it's also quite addictive. So once it, a bit like real flying, and I know this from being bankrupted by my own PPL. Once you get the kind of taste for it, it does tend to kind of suck you in, and you want to fly bigger and bigger planes and do longer and longer flights and more complex procedures. With that thirst for knowledge that we touched on before. So it can become quite all-consuming if you really get into it.
Amazing. So I appreciate we're quite over time where we said would be. I really appreciate you guys staying on for a little bit extra. But I think we're going to wrap it up here, and I think we've had some very good discussion points about what newcomers can expect from joining the community, also sort the type of advice we would give to newcomers as well, and also some of the communities that maybe you can look at joining if you are new to the world of flight simulation. And of course, if you're an experienced simmer already, then we hope that you maybe learned something from this and maybe can see some value in supporting these newcomers as well to the world of flight simulation. I've been joined today by Ben from Airline to Sim, Evan from Flight Sim Expo, Edson from the Sky Lounge / Parallel 42, and Sergio from helisimmer.com. I've been Callum from SoFly. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you again very soon.